Hello everyone, welcome back to part 2 of the Robinson R22 video series here. Today we're going to be doing some of the basic maneuvers of this helicopter, as well as walking you through some of the kind of quirks that are so inherent in this particular vehicle. So let's get started. So last time, of course, we went through the motions of getting it started up and experimenting with some hovers and stuff. And today we're basically going to concentrate on your typical helicopter maneuvers, some of the basic stuff that you can do. We're also going to do a little bit of navigation today to make things a little more interesting for us. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going down to panel variant here. I'm going to go ahead and bop that button, and we can also turn on my GPS option here. I like the GTN personally. If I click that switch right quickly, you'll notice that I get myself a nice little digital display here, which is awesome, because one of the things I can do, among other things, I can come up here. I can actually do keyboard mode, which is super handy. So I can go K. We can do BDL. Makes it pretty easy. Bradley is basically right around the corner. We can do navigation mode. Keep in mind, whatever you have the CDI set to, you have to keep that a little bit careful here. Let's see, go to map real quickly here. Just want to make sure that all looks good to me. You can see that did not cross-fill. Oh, my friend, I should have default nav there, but that's okay. We have the regular GTN, GNS 530 here, which is going to be more than good enough for us. So there's going to be a couple of things we're going to be keeping an eye out for our little journey here as we go. One thing, of course, why do we have so little fuel? That's what happens. Again, they always give you half a tank. I'm like, come on, give me the real fuel. It makes this thing easier to fly. One thing we're going to be keeping an eye out is basically these two gauges. One being your manifold pressure, which is how much power we're using, as well as your carburetor temperature. Now, the carburetor temperature is an interesting problem in the real world. In the sim, it is massively simplified. Basically, one of the things we could do is if we get enough humidity and just the right carburetor temperature, ice will form in the carburetor. And a helicopter with ice in its engine no longer flies. And that's just kind of one of those nasty things you have to be mindful of with a helicopter that, again, not so much of a problem. I mean, carburetor ice is a problem on regular airplanes, but it isn't. So we've got our things all set up as far as our navigational journey here. Who on earth put it on that mode? I see what happened. Click. Hey, there we go. The way God intended. So let's go ahead and get this thing in the air. Last time we showed you one takeoff method. We'll go ahead and show you another takeoff method. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go and grab my stick, pull it a little bit and a little bit to the left. Again, it does not take much. So I'm going to give it a little bit of a push here. Again, it takes very little to get this thing going. And we're just going to glide off the ground just like that. So what I'm going to do is a running takeoff here. Standard, if we just wanted to take off vertically, is not very safe. The reason it's not very safe is because when we do it, what it tends to do is it tends to cause us, if we have an engine failure, to drop right out of the sky like somebody cut the strings. Instead, we're going to be doing a good old-fashioned running takeoff here. And the reason this is such an easy maneuver here is it's also great exercise if you're struggling with hovering with this helicopter, because it's going to give you that extra little bit of experience that you're going to need. So what I'm going to do is push the collective, pull it up a little bit, nose forward, and the helicopter is just gonna go, just like that. And you can see it takes very, very little effort to get this thing moving. And as you can see, I'm already doing 40 knots. I like to hold the nose down. Again, airspeed is more valuable than altitude right now. Airspeed looks good, and I'm just gonna gently let the nose rise on its own. And that is all there is to it. I've got about 700, 800 feet per minute, which is pretty good. We're climbing at about 68 to 70 knots. That's perfect, and the power is right inside the middle of the yellow arc, which is perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and execute a nice gentle turn. I know the folks down there don't really appreciate all the noise that these helicopters are making constantly. Hey, at least they're not the skydivers today. If you lived in my area, you'd understand. So there's going to be a couple things we're going to be keeping an eye out for on our little helicopter adventure here. The first one is going to be paying attention to some of those instruments. Obviously, we have engine instruments there. And the other thing we need to think about is this little guy down here in the left corner. What you'll observe is there's that little white ball that seems to be way outside of its little safety zone there. Of course, as you know from flying planes, step on the ball. So if the ball goes left, we push the left pedal. So let's try that and watch what happens. So I push left pedal, I push left pedal, I push left pedal. You can see the left pedal is almost completely forward. And you can see we finally center the ball at 100% left pedal. You have a non-working instrument. So it's one of those things where as much as we'd love to fly with not flying as a kid, it just doesn't work. The middle is actually right where that line is. So if you look where it is right now, let's recenter the helicopter. That's actually the middle. So the middle of the actual graphic itself, it just isn't centered correctly, but it does work. The other thing we're going to be keeping an eye out as when we're journeying around is going to be our airspeed. This helicopter will go fast quickly. So if you actually look down here, you'll see I'm just about to break the speed limit on this helicopter. So I'm actually going to reduce my power to about 18 here. And I'm just going to stabilize my vertical speed here. I'll let the nose steady just a little bit. And you can see we just passed into our, right past our red line speed here. We have no VNO. We have a VNE in this helicopter. So it takes very, very little effort to suddenly find yourself going faster than the helicopter is allowed to go, which is exactly basically what we're doing here. So let's go ahead and back that power up a little bit more. Again, you're reducing collective, not throttle. If we reduce throttle right now, we'd have to be practicing an auto rotation. There we go. You can see that even at about 15, 16 inches of power, we're able to maintain a pretty steady level flight here. And you can see we're just cruising very, very no problem. Next thing we're going to be keeping an eye out here for is going to be, of course, things like our fuel, which you can see we burn through it very quickly. Again, we're using a ton of energy in this helicopter, and we don't have a lot of fuel, which makes that even more challenging. And the other thing, of course, we're going to be interested in is what's going to happen if our engine suddenly fails on us. Now, one of the challenges we always have with anything with helicopter is keeping this stupid helicopter in the air. These are complicated machines, and there's a lot of places they can go wrong. If you don't have a lot of that extra get up and go that other helicopters would have, or airplanes would have, to make it a little bit safer. So you always want to be mindful of what will happen in the event that you do have some kind of sudden failure. Now, the big problem with this helicopter, of course, is we have very, very little room for error as far as speed goes. If we're ripping along like we are right now, doing, about 105, we're absolutely at the maximum limit. That doesn't give us a lot of room if we have to suddenly put the helicopter into some kind of dive. So, I'm just sort of cruising along. Everything feels pretty comfortable to me. Nothing really to complain about at any particular moment. And what if we were to suddenly lose our engine? That could make things very interesting for us, and we'll demonstrate that for you. So I'm going to go ahead and shut the helicopter off for a second here. I'm just going to reach down here. We got our governor. The governor is probably the easiest thing to disable. When you disable the governor, things go down wrong very quickly here. So let's go ahead and do one of those, and we should almost immediately lose RPM. Chop the RPM. And you can see our safer spot was actually this field. Remember, the helicopter's already failed you. It's just a matter of getting it on the ground. Yeah! Safe. Nice. So go ahead and I'll apply the throttle back on here. I'll click the governor back on as well. And you can see that the helicopter was saved. And the reason our helicopter saved, I'm not going to say that was the world's nicest auto rotation. I'm not going to even say it was a good auto rotation. But you know what's amazing? I'm still safe and I didn't break the helicopter. Now, the reason I put ourselves down right here is to show you the importance of knowing where you're going to set down in an emergency. As you could see, there was, you saw that lovely runway. Your brain was saying, he's just going to go right to that runway and he's going to settle it right on there like a pro and everything's going to look amazing. He's going to go, look at that, look at that, look at that. But instead, you noticed that we couldn't do it. You'll notice as soon as we lost power, how quickly the helicopter just fell from the sky. We have so little inertia on the blades of this helicopter that when problems do arise, you have to work with what you have immediately. And I hope I demonstrated that smoothly by showing you basically how you could suck the energy out of the rotor and keep that rotor speed up. Once your rotor starts losing speed, you have already crashed. That's just one of those things that people forget, especially with this helicopter. You've got to keep that rotor speed up. Otherwise, you will find yourself one of the unfortunate victims of helicopter crashes pretty darn quickly. But again, you can see just how fast that happens and how what you thought was going to be the spot to land was not the spot to land. And I think I made that example extremely clear in that little piece there. Would we have survived? Absolutely would have survived. Will we need to change our underwear? Yeah, we'd probably have to change our underwear after that. But the key thing there was just how little time you have and how little room you have to be able to get the thing back down on the ground if you do lose your engine suddenly. Again, you're not going to be fiddling with the engine. You saw it was seconds. And that's one of the cool things I love about this helicopter is that it really, 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 really reinforces good helicopter flying skills when you're going to be in those situations. As a matter of fact, I love doing auto rotations in this helicopter because even though that one was pretty garbage because it was a 180 auto rotation, they're so much harder in the modeling, the simulation, because of how light this helicopter is. You have no room for error. You're either going to get it right or you're going to crash, which makes sense. That's pretty much anything right. So the next thing we're going to go ahead and take a look at this helicopter is a little bit about some of the maneuvers that we can do with it. Now, we already saw the auto rotation, which is one I always recommend people practice to death. Once you think you're okay with hovering, do a couple auto rotations. And when you think you're good with that, go back to hovering because you know you're not good at it, just like I'm not good at it kind of a thing. Obviously, it's easier if you have better controls. So the other thing we want to be thinking about is what our cruise altitude is going to be. And again, I'm jabbering here rather than watching my instruments because you can see I easily oversped the helicopter there, which is what we're trying to avoid doing. I don't want to have to buy another one of these. They're not cheap. Each door is $6,000. I think I made that comment already, though. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do one of my favorite helicopter maneuvers with this. And again, since this is a training helicopter, it's right up this helicopter's alley, and that is going to be a quick stop. Now, a quick stop is an interesting maneuver because basically we're going to be trying to get the helicopter to come down to a very, very low, basically stopping all forward motion of the helicopter in a hurry. Now, the reason I really enjoy that maneuver is when it is done right, it is a very easy maneuver to do. When it is done wrong, it chops your tail off. So, it's kind of one of those situations where you have to just kind of be mindful of all what you're doing. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to basically pull up while reducing collective at the same time. Now, the reason that's such a useful maneuver is in the event that we do need to slow down in a hurry, it does give us that kind of a flexibility to do so very, very easily. And again, this thing is much faster than it is in the real world. Real world, you're lucky if you get 85 out of it. You never get 100 unless you're in a dive. Come on, settle down, settle down. I got to do my demonstration here. So to do our quick stop, what we're going to do is build up enough speed, which we have plenty of. And what we're going to do is we're going to pull the nose up at the same time as dropping the collective down to the floor. As we do that, we're going to monitor our rotor RPM, which is going to have a tendency to basically fly away on. But we don't want that because then we still need the rotor to land. But basically, it's going to run away on us because of all that extra air that's now trying to be pulled through it. It's a very, very quick effect. So let's go ahead and pick a pretty good target here. I'm going to go ahead and reduce my rotor RPM quite a bit here. I'm down to about 10 inches here. Oh, nose up, nose up. Never push forward on a helicopter. Go ahead and pull the nose forward. As a matter of fact, I think they even give you a warning not to do that. The reason they don't want you doing that is, again, you'll chop your own tail off. Don't do that. Another thing you'll find very interesting here is if I were to take the collective and push it all the way to the floor, you'll notice in a Robinson you have no control whatsoever. So you need a little bit of collective in, even when you're doing silly maneuvers. Otherwise, you will have literally no bite of the air, and you'll have no control. So you always need a little bit of collective. Anyway, let's go ahead and execute our maneuver. It looks like a pretty good target, the International Terminal. I'm sure they're really, really not going to appreciate me what I'm about to do, but that's okay. So there we go. We got our speed settled down. We got our altitude more or less constant. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to race at the International building there. So looking to look pretty good. Got my speed up a little bit. Got my speed up, and now we're going to come to a complete stop. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my collective back. I'm going to pull the nose up at the same time. I'm going to watch my rotor RPM, and I'm going to apply lots of right foot. Watch your RPM. Watch your RPM. Watch your RPM. Left foot, left foot, left foot, left foot. Catch it. Caught it. Nice. So as you can see, the helicopter just stops. It's such a cool maneuver. When you do this at low altitude, of course, it's quite a gas because you could basically stop inside of a building if that's something you desire to do. Again, did you notice how high the rotor RPM got during that maneuver, just to give you an idea of how aggressive that can actually be? It's always something you want to kind of be mindful of. All right, so to finish this one off, again, hopefully I've given you some really fun ideas to do with this. Like I said, I love what they did with this. They did such a good job. I'm definitely going to pick up some of their other helicopters because it's so smooth. It's just the right amount of sensitive, too. It's not oversensitive like the real one, but it's way more sensitive than anything you normally fly. So we got to settle this thing down to the ground here. Now, we've already seen one type of landing, and that's basically when you just kind of settle it kind of gently down on the ground, and you're going to kind of hover land, just like that. But what we're going to do is we're going to do a sliding landing here, which is more fun in my opinion. And one thing you have to remember with this one, with many, many helicopters, is that whole rotor and ground effect problem. So right now what I've done is I'm coming down at about 500 feet per minute, which is pretty fast for a helicopter. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in a little bit of collective here. And what's going to happen is the helicopter's going to suddenly flatten. Watch. See how it does that? And that's your rotor and ground effect. It causes us to do that little kind of bouncing off the cushion. In the real world, bouncing off the cushion, it's kind of fun. Much easier to do when you have not even half a millimeter of a clearance there. So what we're going to do is we're going to settle over the ground. We're going to pull our collective down. And we're just going to wait. There we go. As soon as we're on the ground, we want to give a little bit of left collective, drop the collective, and now we are nice, safe, and sound on the ground. Now, in the real helicopter, what we would normally do is sit here on the ground for about 2 or 3 minutes, basically, letting everything cool off. That's the best way to do it. So what you'll notice here is collective. We're going to go full down, friction on. So you can see we're all the way down there. We're going to pop the friction on. We're just going to pull that back real quickly like that, just like that. We're going to see here collective set RPM to 70 to 75%. You'll notice here, of course, if I fiddle with my governor here, I can get it all the way down. Let's go ahead and reduce that a little bit. There's the red line for the rotor. Give it just a little more power. I'm basically manually controlling with my throttle here. And it's not 75%. 75%'s down here. You can read an instrument. Let's let that go down just a little bit. Yeah, right there. And basically what we're doing is just cooling everybody off. Our helicopter, you can see right now, we're hot. We're about 350 Fahrenheit on the cylinder head temperature. Oil temperature is pretty high. The pressure is actually really high too. We've been exercising the heck out of this thing. So that looks pretty good to me. Cyclic neutral, CHT drop. What they're really saying here is they want you to wait for this to drop substantially before you cut it. And you can see right now it is slowly hiking to the left here. Like I said, it's usually about 2 minutes in the real world. Once we do that, one of the things you'll see here is we're going to go ahead and, let's see here, cyclic CHT drop, clutch switch disengaged. Okay, this is the part I don't love. Let me show you why. So we're going to open up the clutch switch, and that's going to disengage the engine from our rotor blades. And that's going to cause the rotor RPM to drop pretty quick. It's going to take a few minutes. Again, remember, it's a centrifugal clutch, so it's got to kind of come loose. So go ahead and I'll continue pulling this out. We're going to get a bunch of angry things here. Give it a few moments. Like, notice the wait 30 seconds, wait 30 seconds. Isn't that neat? All right, we're just going to let it kind of settle here. Nice. So now that that's all nice and settled, we're then going to go ahead and pull the mixture off. So we're going to open up this little cup here, and we're just going to pull the mixture out. Again, we were supposed to wait 30 seconds. And you just got to give it a few minutes. You're going to get a bunch of warning lights. And, of course, the rotor won't stop. It's got plenty of inertia. So, like I said, there it goes. That's out. So it looks pretty good. Clutch light out. You want to wait for the clutch light to go out. It did. We're all set. Let's see, check and record meter readings. We did all that. Door and blade are secure. And then, of course, we just go over our switches. And it's going to tell us that we flew for X amount of time and all that other good stuff, which is awesome. One thing we want to do is we want to disengage the magneto as well. Lastly, but not leastly, we want to engage the rotor brake. Now, what you're supposed to do when you pull this thing in the real world, it's kind of spring-loaded a little bit, but when I crank it in sim, it like and just stops the rotor like instantly. Like it's pretty quick. And got it. Oh, look at that. We got it almost. Oh my gosh, look how close to 90 degrees we got that. Not perfect, not perfect. So as you can see, the folks over at Cohen Sim did a fantastic job with this helicopter. It's everything that I feel helicopters actually feel like, but that's going to be at the cost of convenience. People are really going to struggle to fly this helicopter, especially in a hover, because of all the fun things that it has on here and how sensitive it is. This thing is super. If you're trying to learn a helicopter, if you can figure out how to fly this, you can fly any helicopter. Enjoy.